Well, welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the half hour. UK Health Secretary Wes Streeting resigns from Starmer's government, says he has lost confidence in his leadership. President Xi Jinping hails US-China relations as the most important relationship in the world. The US president invites President Xi and his wife to the White House in September. Let's begin the world today. And we begin with the latest political updates from the United Kingdom. Prime Minister Keir Starmer still battling to save his job following last week's heavy election losses across Britain. Health Secretary Wes Streeting today resigned from Starmer's government, stating he's lost confidence in the Prime Minister's leadership. In a letter to the Prime Minister, which Streeting published online, he wrote, "Where vision is needed, it was filled with a vacuum where we need direction. There was a drift." Streeting has not yet triggered a leadership challenge. However, in his message to Starmer, he stated that it is clear that Mrs. Starmer will not lead the Labour Party into the next general election. The former Health Secretary would need the backing of 81 Labour MPs to trigger a leadership contest. Earlier today, Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, warned that launching a leadership contest would plunge the country into chaos. Now to the visit by the US President Donald Trump to China. It appears both leaders are getting down to business on day two. Earlier, President Trump said President Xi offered to help to resolve the conflict between the US and Iran and would like to see the Strait of Hormuz open. China has close ties to Iran and is the #1 consumer of Iranian oil. Trump had been widely expected to push China to pressure Iran to accept a peace deal and to open the Strait of Hormuz. China is, however, opposed to militarization and a toll for the straits. Trump arrived in Beijing, China on Wednesday to a welcome ceremony at the Great Hall of the People, after which he and President Xi held a bilateral meeting. They ended the day with a state banquet where lobster in tomato soup and crispy beef ribs were on the menu. On the sidelines, the Chinese Premier Li Qiang encouraged Elon Musk, Tim Cook, Jensen Huang, and a host of other top US business leaders who flew with Trump to deepen their presence in China and serve as a bridge between the world's two largest economies, in a meeting with them earlier today. Meanwhile, President Xi Jinping has stressed the significance of China's relationship with the United States. During his address at a state banquet in honor of President Trump, he noted that the US-China ties the most important bilateral relationship in the world, saying the two countries should be partners rather than opponents. He drew parallels between different points in their histories, saying just as many Chinese now love basketball and blue jeans, Chinese restaurants in America today outnumber the 5 largest fast food chains in the United States, all combined. President Trump said the talks that they had were extremely positive and productive. President Xi, on his side, praised the great people of both nations, adding that the US-China relationship is the most consequential in the world and they must never mess it up. Well, feeling very happy with the progress on his meeting with the Chinese president. President Trump invited President Xi and his wife for a return visit on September 24th this year. As he addressed the state banquet, in his words, "It is my honor to extend an invitation to you and Madame Peng to visit us at the White House this September." Trump's trip to China marks his second state visit to the country and a first for U.S. president since 2017. It was delayed from April at the America's request during the Iran war.
Thank you again, President Xi, for this beautiful welcome, and tonight it is my honor to extend an invitation to you and Madam Peng to visit us at the White House this September 24th, and we look forward to it. And I'd now like to raise a glass and propose a toast to the rich and enduring ties between the American and Chinese people. It's a very special relationship, and I want to thank you again. This has been an amazing period of time.
U.S. President Donald Trump. Let's bring in now our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird. Maria, there had been a lot of expectations for this meeting between both leaders. So far, everything is going swimmingly. What are experts saying could both leaders be hiding their true feelings regarding the state of their relations?
This much anticipated visit between the U.S. and China and having President Trump actually go to China was one that I think was a surprise to many. But as it's been labeled, a state visit. And so typically with state visits, they are very formal in nature. They really focus on kind of the ceremonial practices between two countries. And so that's really what we're seeing, as many people were expecting to see much of a upheaval potentially, or maybe even some conversations that could have led to more heated frameworks between the two countries. We're not seeing that. The most that we are seeing is the notion around Taiwan and kind of the warning from China's president regarding the U.S. kind of staying out of that and kind of staying in its lane in that area. But there is not a lot of conversation or thoughts around kind of the dissension between some of the trade pieces, some of the tariffs that we've seen between the two countries. So it'll be very interesting to see what continues to happen, as this visit is not expected to end until Friday, May the 15th.
I wonder, Maria, how much is realistically expected to be achieved with this meeting? And the last time Trump met with President Xi, there was a build-up to that meeting. What could be achieved this time round? It's been doused by a lot of conflict, especially the conflict in the Middle East, and China being referred to as the Iranian whisperer.
There are many global and geopolitical issues for the two presidents to discuss that will be discussed throughout their visit and have started to be part of the discussion points, noting that the two presidents agreed that their relationship is very consequential and that the two presidents must find a way to make it work. And so that is definitely what the president of China and both President Trump are very clear on, but not staying away from the fact that they also understand the Strait of Hormuz. They both agree that the strait must stay open, that it is vital to the geopolitical climate, and is vital to trade relations across the world. And so they both agree on that area. And obviously conversations around the Iran war have become very front and center, as that continues to be one of the most consequential and largest issues of the day globally.
So the U.S. president has a delegation of businessmen with him on this trip. One of them is Elon Musk, who, as far as we know, has never been a fan of China. So what kind of deals is Trump expecting to cut out at this meeting?
This is the first time that President Trump has been to China since his first presidency in 2017. And so it's clear and vital, based off of where the U.S. economy sits, where the geopolitical climate that exists, that he brings forth business relationships and to increase those. And as we know, he has brought Elon Musk of Tesla. He's brought Apple. He's brought various CEOs that are very influential in the global marketplace. And so these U.S. companies are there to try to assist him in the areas of business relationships. We know that China continues to have a stronghold in technology. We also know that they are beginning to have a stronghold in the automotive industry. And so it is going to be an extremely important conversation for the president to have with these business leaders that will be able to negotiate with China around some of the business relationships that will directly feed into the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy has shown a slowing down in some areas. And so the president realizes that, noting that inflation continues to be a topic of discussion, and also the cost of living, and specifically around the income of Americans. And so these business leaders going in the door, being able to have these conversations with China, with the president there, will really allow for potentially increased marketplaces for the United States.
Thanks again, Maria, our correspondent in Washington. And the United States Army says a full body of a second missing American soldier has been recovered in Morocco following a major international search operation during the African Lion 2026 military exercises. The two soldiers disappeared near a coastal cliff while taking part in training drills along Morocco's Atlantic coast. One of them, 19-year-old Maria Collington, was found earlier in a coastal cave before both bodies were transferred to a military hospital and flown back to the United States. More than 1,000 U.S., Moroccan, and Allied personnel joined the week-long search across land, sea, and air, with the investigators believing the soldiers may have accidentally fallen into the ocean. Russia's Pacific Fleet was seen firing Musket cruise missiles at simulated enemy targets in the waters of the Sea of Japan. Footage published earlier today. A video showed R-14 and R-20 vessels striking the targets. According to one of the military officers there, the target, located over 100 kilometers away, was successfully hit by a direct hit from 2 Musket cruise missiles. Ships, aircraft, and drones from the Pacific Fleet's naval aviation units were involved. The date of the footage cannot be independently verified. And at least 8 people have been killed, including a 12-year-old girl in Kyiv, after Russia launched a massive overnight drone and missile strikes on the Ukrainian capital and other regions. The victims' bodies were pulled from the rubble of a partially destroyed apartment building in Kyiv, where rescuers are still searching for at least 20 people feared missing. According to the Ukrainian Emergency Services, 45 people, including 2 children, were injured. Friday has been declared a day of mourning in the city. As a 3rd day in a row, Ukraine has reported deaths as Moscow ramps up its assault after a 3-day ceasefire expired on Monday. The overnight barrage saw more than 670 drones and 56 missiles targeting the country. President Volodymyr Zelensky said this is among the largest attacks Russia has mounted since the start of its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The strikes hit more than 180 sites across Ukraine, including more than 50 residential buildings, according to the Ukrainian president. That brings us to a break now on The World Today. We'll be right back. Welcome back. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi today welcomed the foreign ministers of the BRICS nations, including Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, to Delhi for a high-stakes ministerial meeting unfolding under the shadow of intense regional conflict. A summit chaired by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar marks a pivotal moment for the expanded 11-member bloc as it navigates significant global influx and energy insecurity. A central focus of the gathering is the presence of Iranian Foreign Minister Syed Abbas Araghchi, whose participation comes as the world monitors the ongoing instability in the Gulf and Iran's influence over the Strait of Hormuz. Well, this meeting represents the first time officials from Iran and the UAE have met face-to-face since the outbreak of recent hostilities involving the U.S. and Israel earlier this year. While the summit's formal agenda emphasizes building for resilience, innovation, cooperation, and sustainability, the discussions are heavily influenced by the economic and security implications of the current conflict. A Hantavirus outbreak that began on a cruise ship in the South Atlantic is now drawing attention in Germany, with several German nationals connected to the MV Honduras being flown back for medical monitoring under special precautions. For more on this, let's cross over to Thomas Sparrow, a correspondent with our partners DW in Berlin. Thomas, great to see you. What do we know about these German nationals?
This story is prominent here in Germany and here in Europe as well. There's no doubt about that, because The ship actually had around 150 passengers from over 20 nationalities, but 70 of those passengers were actually European from different countries, the UK, Spain, France, the Netherlands, Spain. And specifically when it comes to Germany, there were 8 passengers from Germany. One of those passengers was actually among the 3 deceased, and the remaining have been flown back to Germany. Some were actually in a hospital in Frankfurt being checked, but then the others are now back in their respective cities, in their respective regions. This has to do with the fact that they have to isolate specifically in their respective cities, and they are going to be monitored specifically by local health authorities there on a daily basis, for example, checking their temperature. There is a lot of interest in this story here in Germany about also these 8 Germans, but it is definitely not something that is only of interest here in Germany, but I would say also in other European countries as well, as the other European passengers are also repatriated back to their countries of origin.
Right, and how are German authorities assessing the risk to the general public?
So the overall risk to the general public is being assessed as low, by the way, not only by Germany's health authorities, also from European health authorities. In particular, experts have stressed time and time again that it's important not to compare the Hantavirus to, for example, the COVID, and not to expect a pandemic as we had with COVID. They've been stressing that there are clear differences in the way the virus spreads, in the way the virus also develops. So that is something very important from the health perspective. However, there is one important element that is a matter of concern for health authorities, and that's the fact that this specific variant of the Hantavirus is being described as having a high mortality rate, so around 40 to 50%. And that's why for those who are infected, for those who have symptoms, this Hantavirus is particularly dangerous. But authorities have been stressing that for the general public, the risk remains very low.
Surely other European countries are concerned. How are they reacting?
As I stressed, this is something that not only affects Germany. There were passengers from all sorts of different European countries, the UK in particular, Spain, the Netherlands, France, Germany, as I already stressed. And that's why this is not only something that is being monitored very closely by German health authorities, by the German Public Health Institute, but also from a European perspective as well. On the one hand, to understand how these different passengers are faring, in particular if they are coping well with their isolation, if they need any other medical treatments and so on, but also in particular then if the situation does become more challenging, to then coordinate public responses. So in essence, I would say, based on the number of passengers, based on the way these passengers are being transferred back to their countries of origin, this is certainly a challenge for European countries, and one that they're trying to discuss and monitor also nationally, but also from a European perspective as well.
Thanks again, Thomas, our correspondent with the DW in Berlin. Well, back here, relations between Nigeria and South Africa remain under scrutiny amid ongoing concerns over the anti-foreign sentiment and migration tensions. Nigeria's Consul General in Johannesburg, Ambassador Ninikanwa Oke-Uche, says the actions of a small group should not define the broader relationship between the two African giants. Speaking exclusively with Channels Television, the envoy calls for stronger cooperation, greater understanding and proactive efforts at addressing illegal migration and xenophobia. Our correspondent in South Africa, Innocent Samosa, reports.
Speaking exclusively to Channels Television, Ambassador Ninikanwa Oke-Uche says anti-foreigner sentiment in South Africa is being applied by a small but vocal minority.
Even the government has made it clear that they don't agree. But then you have all these opposition parties, the vigilante groups, Operation Dudula, Action SA. They are also a small percentage. But they are the ones who need these anti-foreigner sentiments to be whipped up, because that's the way they get their votes. But I think both the Nigerian and the South African people are starting to say, no, this is wrong. I don't even see it as xenophobia. It's more Afrophobia. The Chinese, the non-black Africans are not being harassed. Their shops are not in danger. They're not being arrested. They're not being asked for their papers. So it's crazy, black on black.
Ambassador Oke-Uche says many Nigerians living in South Africa are law-abiding professionals and business leaders contributing positively to the economy and society?
Well, honestly, I think even a blind man can see that Nigeria and South Africa must be close, not just for the benefit of each nation, but for the benefit of the African continent. It breaks my heart because I've done my homework. The percentage of foreigners in South Africa is 7 to 8%. 7 to 8%. So that little piece of the pie cannot be blamed for all the problems. You know, unfortunately, yes, there are no perfect people. Every nation has the good, bad, the ugly, the beautiful. But the fact of the matter is that in South Africa, the larger percentage of Nigerians are amazing, adding great value.
She, however, acknowledged concerns around crime and illegal migration, stressing that the Nigerian government does not support unlawful activities.
2 reasons. 1, because both missions are here to help our people. So it's a major help for our people. But not just that. We are also telling the South African government that we are with you. We do not support anything illegal. If there's illegal migration, we are against it. So if there are 100 illegal Nigerians in South Africa today, on our own, without the South African government even asking us to, we are in the process of reducing those numbers.
Ambassador Oke Uche also revealed that Nigerian authorities are working on repatriation support for stranded citizens who wish to return home but cannot afford travel costs or fear penalties linked to immigration violations.
Now, right now, even before all the crises broke out, East London, xenophobia, at the consulate, I had identified one of the needs of our people. What was that need? We have a lot of stranded, destitute people who want to go home. They want to go home, but they can't afford the airfare. Those who can afford the airfare are scared because what happens is they get to the airport, they're arrested, they're detained, and they have to pay a fine, which is in accordance with South African law. So what happens? You can't afford the airfare, you're scared to leave. We end up having a swelling number of illegal migrants.
The envoy also urged communities and political actors to avoid inflaming tensions for political gain, warning that such actions could damage trade, investment, and unity. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
And as we end the program today, at the Guadalajara Zoo, soaring temperatures are bringing out some widely creative solutions to keeping animals cool. Zookeepers are serving frozen fish blocks, to bears, fruit-filled ice treats, to primates, and refreshing snacks to kangaroos, giraffes, lemurs, meerkats, as Mexico battles intense heat, probably like we are in Lagos. Caretakers say the icy meals are not just about hydration, they're also designed to reduce stress, encourage natural behavior, and keep the animals mentally stimulated. From colorful popsicles to specially planned enrichment diets, staff at the Guadalajara Zoo say every frozen treat plays a role in protecting the animals' health and well-being during the scorching summer months.
O sea, tienes que estar ahí como esclava.
Sí, o sea, I guess we should take a cue from these animals. Stay cool and hydrated. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani.